Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers, here to talk Seahawks football. Fun show today planned for you. We are doing our final mock draft of the mock draft season prior to the NFL draft. Lots of fun players to talk about, I'm sure. Both Keith and I brought in our own independent mocks. I have no idea what Keith's strategy was or which players he was looking for. Neither does Keith on mine. The only thing I know about your draft is that you had 3 trades and I had 3 trades, but I don't know anything else.
Which usually our rule is 2. We didn't explicitly say that when we were planning this show, but I found myself making a third, and I'm thinking, well, Bill's probably going to break the rules anyway, and so right. I thought it would be okay.
Yeah, we just didn't have any rules. We didn't even talk about how we were going to do this, but yeah, so we kind of came in with a similar thought process, and we'll just see how it goes. I moved off of 5. So did you? Okay. Where'd you end up?
I moved down from 5 to pick 7, and I got a second round pick, number 38, to do so. And you are completely frozen.
Sorry, we're having a little audio show already. Sorry. Okay, so you said you moved down from 5 to 7.
Yep.
And I picked up a second round pick.
Yeah. Picked up second round pick 38.
Okay. So, and I moved to 9. So, or actually I moved to 6, but I also had a second trade before I made my selection. So my first trade was moving off 5 just back 1 spot to 6. And I received from Detroit. They moved up to take. I don't have that information. Okay. But I would imagine it was Witherspoon or something like that. But I received pick number 55 and pick number 152 from Detroit. And then Detroit received round 3, pick number 83 as well as the 5th. So I kind of swapped them number 83 for number 55 plus a 5th round pick. But I moved again. I moved back to with Chicago at 9. Picked up a 53 and a 103 from Chicago, and they received a 123 from me for doing that. So I don't pick until 9, but so you're first.
So I moved back off of 7 because the way the draft fell. Oh, sorry, I moved back off 5 to 7 because the way the draft fell, I was sitting there looking at a bunch of guys that I would have liked. And so I went ahead and moved back and ended up with Anthony Richardson, quarterback. There at 7. So
nice. Wow. So that's a big strategy shift from what I did. Tell me about your process there.
Well, it comes down to ultimately you only end up in the top part of the draft very often. John Snyder said that. And so when I was looking at it, I mean, you had Jalen Carter and Anthony Richardson, both available. The Will Levis was there if I'd really screwed this up. And was like, okay, I'm just going to move down and we'll take who is available when they get there. And it just worked out. Richardson was still sitting there, and so I went ahead and selected him after picking up another second round pick.
Nice. I have to tell you, this is one of my proudest moments as a draft analyst, quote unquote, because I predicted, I think in January, Keith, that I would get you to move from your no Anthony Richardson stance, and that was even considering him in the second round at the time, to having Anthony Richardson move up in this draft and be one of the top quarterbacks. And you were like, no way, that's not going to happen. And have you select him at
This isn't
7
the first.
overall in
This
your
isn't the
mock
first
draft.
time. This
This
isn't the
is
first
wonderful.
time.
This is just, I can't even believe it.
That's where he's being taken. That's where all the teams are looking at him. I mean,
I'm having fun with it. I love that selection. I do, because I agree with you. I think that he's worthy of that spot, but you're not talking about a player that's going to impact your roster in 2023.
I think moving down and getting him made that pick more palatable for me.
Yeah, and I have the same philosophy with another player.
Okay, who'd you pick at 9?
So at 9, so I moved back, obviously to 6. There were, as you stated, three players available to me that I really liked. And when I was at 6, those 3 players were still available. And so I went ahead and moved to 9, thinking I would get one of them. And similar players were available: Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, Witherspoon was still on the board. I think Tyree Wilson, possibly. And so I moved back to 9, and the player that I was really thinking that would be possible and I would be comfortable taking at 9 was there in Jalen Carter. I don't know where the team stands on Jalen Carter as far as being on their board, off their board, whether they would be willing to take him at 5 as is, or whether they need to drop back a little bit in order to be comfortable because they're getting additional draft capital. Plus, they have the pick at 20. So Jalen Carter's the pick at 9. He's the best player on the board. And you just got to mitigate the risk a little bit. And they did that. So Carter at 9 made a lot of sense for me.
I really like that pick. Just dominant player. So after moving down from 5 to 7, I had to move back up for off 20.
Oh, okay.
So I jumped from 20 up to 18. And I gave up pick 151 to do so. I was expecting to have to give up a 4th round pick, but Detroit was like, they just wanted 151. So I went ahead and moved up. Happy to do that. And I took Nolan Smith, the edge slash linebacker slash everything athlete out of Georgia. Super uber athlete. Like 30 pounds bigger than Jamal Adams, but runs and is like more athletic than Jamal. So to me, that was a guy that I wanted to come out of this draft with. And
nice.
I was willing to move up. I actually didn't expect, I thought he would go around 12. And that was going to be too much of a, but when I saw him at 15, I was like, okay, hit the pause button so I can get a trade going. And it was going fast enough. It ended up at 18, but he was still there, moved up, got the trade, got the guy.
That's a great move. I've done quite a few simulations where I do that, where I will look at who's available at 15, 16 and make a decision whether I'm going to move up or not, or I'm going to stay and try to figure out if somebody stays there. And often it just doesn't happen. It doesn't break that way for me. So I think moving up strategically is a good move. You don't have to give up a lot to get the player that you want. I think that's a good move. I would move up a little bit for Skoronski. I would move up a little bit for Nolan Smith. Maybe Najigba, if how they feel about him, if he's still on the board, or possibly a corner. But Nolan Smith there is outstanding. Knocked that out of the park. I ended up staying in this draft, staying at 20. I had already moved back off the other one quite a bit, so I was comfortable staying there at 20. And then I dropped back again because there were all the players that I really coveted at 20 and earlier were off the board. And I was comfortable with the next set of players that I had similar grades on, between 20 and 30 or 20 and 35, and knew that what my strategy was going to be if I had a short drop back. So I did. I traded out of 20 to back to 23, received a late 3rd round pick, number 87 overall from Minnesota. Minnesota moves up. I moved back to 23 and I went and got the player that I was wanting to get in Mozzie Smith. Now, Mozzie Smith is normally a guy that's going to be going, I think, in the first round, late in the first round, and possibly holding on until the early second round. I knew that he probably wouldn't be there for me at 37. And so this is a player I just went and got. Some people are going to say it's a slight reach. I don't think so. It's a perfect fit in Seattle's defense as their nose tackle that can do a little extra. He's athletic enough where he can move around a little bit for you. So he that you're 0 to 1 tech most of the time. So I thought the scheme diversity was there, and a player that I think is a in this system.
Yeah, so then the next pick would be 37. And I did not move off that spot. I actually have picks 37 and 38 because of my early trade down.
Nice.
But in 37, I know that we talked about it in our last show. The biggest priority is defensive line. You got to get a guy. You got Mozzie Smith. I missed out on Mozzie Smith in order to get Nolan Smith. But I, at 37, could not wait anymore. I went and got Kalijah Cansey, the defensive tackle out of Pittsburgh. He's a little short, but is explosive, athletic, uses that natural leverage that comes from being short. And I just think he's going to be a great, interior guy, and went with that pick.
I love that pick. I mean, it's kind of like your Puna Ford thing, where he's a shorter guy, 6'1", and weighs less than 300 pounds coming into the league. And if you miss out on Jalen Carter, Cansey's the next guy up as far as on the big board in that. And I really like the player. I would be surprised. I would be shocked if he's really there at 37. I think he's going to go a little earlier in the draft because it's a position where you've got a little shortage in high end talent, and he's a player I think that's probably going to go in the 20s somewhere. I think, but if he's there at 37, and Seattle did not go with Jalen Carter, and he's sitting there, I think he would be the pick for sure.
Yeah. Who'd you get at 37?
I got Drew Sanders, linebacker out of Arkansas. And the reason I was looking at a couple different linebackers at this spot. And the reason that I went with Drew Sanders was positional value wise and big board wise. He was just a little higher on my board than a couple other players. And I like the scheme diversity that he brings. He's very athletic, sideline to sideline speed, agility. He can play two different spots for you if you need him to, not only in the middle in a 3-4, but he can also go off the edge for you, put his hand in the dirt as a probably a 7 tech to 9 tech guy on the outside. He can blitz for you. He's going to be able to cover tight ends and running backs out of the backfield. Just an overall solid player at that spot where Seattle needs depth, not necessarily starters this year. And he's kind of fits in right away as a guy that's going to have nice rotational minutes.
Cool. I like that pick. Kind of wish I'd made that pick. But I didn't. At 38, which, like I said, I had 2 picks in a row. I went with a center, and it's a guy that you and I keep mocking to Seattle over and over again, John Michael Schmitz. Wow. Maybe a reach there by some people's standards. I would not be surprised to see Seattle grab him in that spot, simply because he's the best in the draft and the guy that the team needs the most. So John Michael Schmitz at 38.
I love that pick. I've tended lately to trend towards Tippmann in this area, in this spot. It might be a little early for him, but I think for Seattle, it might be a better prospect because he's younger and athletic wise, he's still super athletic. At 52 now, I've gone down from, you mentioned 38 there. I'm now at 52, Seattle's native pick. I went with Luke Weipler, the center from Ohio State. Now,
Mm-hmm.
he's not as coveted as Schmitz or as Tippmann, and he might be available a little later in the draft, but he's there. He's in this range of between 50 and 75 on big boards where I think he's going to be taken. I think the position is coveted because obviously you're taking Schmitz early. I think Tippmann comes off the board before Weipler, and then it's Weipler. And
And then Cody Mock
and
is the
Cody
other
Mock
one.
sitting there, and there's a couple of Steve Avila, a couple other players that could play center. But he's my guy. I think he's a perfect fit in Seattle's scheme for what they want to
No,
do.
I like it. I like that pick too. So I actually moved off 52. This is my third and final trade. Um, Mainly just because the Eagles offered me pick 94 if I would move all the way down from 52 to 62. So I moved back 10 spots, but got a top 100 pick
Nice. And
out of it.
I picked two picks. I have two picks before that actually
Go for it.
because of my trades. So
Mm-hmm.
I had 55 or excuse me, 53 right after 52 and 55. So my first pick at 53, right after Luke Weipler, was the edge rusher Derek Hall out of Auburn. If you go look at Derek Hall on his athletic profile, he's just a beast. He's one of the most athletic edge players in this draft. Came in with an athleticism score of next gen stats as second overall in this draft class. With a very high score, 6'3", 254 pounds. He's a perfect edge player, 34-inch arms, super athletic, ran a 4.55 40. I think he's totally undervalued in this draft. If you take a look at big boards, he's in the 50s, 60s, 70s sometimes. Sometimes he's getting pushed back into the draft when you do mocks into the late third round. I think he's probably a second round player in this draft. And I'm really excited to get him because he kind of rounds out my defensive line class that I'm coming out of the draft with. I got Jalen Carter and then Mozzie Smith. Now I've got my edge guy and Derek Hall. It's not a huge priority for Seattle, but he was the best player on the board at that time, and I'm real happy with the pick.
Cool. And then what's your other pick? 58.
At 55.
55.
This is now my another trade pick that I picked up. Actually, with my first trade back at with Detroit dropping back one spot, I picked up that 55th pick, and I chose Julius Brents, the cornerback out of Kansas State. Again, this is best player available on my board, and a position that I wanted to try to upgrade going into the draft. We've talked about our current roster quite a bit, and I just thought there's a little bit of a weakness there with Mike Jackson. He's under a 1-year deal, again, second year in a row. We've got Trey Brown, Kobe Bryant. It seems like it's an okay future, another big physical cornerback, a guy that's going to be able to come up and hit you, press cover corner as well. Can you imagine like Julius Brents being our star in
Yeah, that would be fun having him opposite Woolen. That's just too much to ask for.
Yeah.
So okay, so then the next pick,
And what was your next pick?
my next pick is 62.
Okay.
And with that pick, because I moved down from 52 to 62, I ended up with Ade Ade. The
Nice.
3-4, and it's listed as edge, but he's too big to be an outside linebacker. But he's out of Northwestern. Super athletic, 265-pound guy who can play, basically the same position as Dre Jones,
Taylor. Yeah.
or
Well, yeah,
or
right.
Jamal Taylor. But yeah, he's a pass rusher and a very good one, and a guy that can come up and be really disruptive on the defensive line. And for me, getting Kalijah Cansey for the 3 and then Ade Ade for the 5, to me that gave me the quality and depth I wanted on the defensive line. I still don't have a nose tackle, but yeah, I'm okay with that after getting these two guys.
Yeah, Adio Boare is an amazing physical specimen. Just blew it out of the park at the Senior Bowl as well as the Combine. Love that pick. I mean, he would upgrade that spot rotationally wise and possibly work out. Want to be one of the best defensive players in the draft, I think, overall, when it's all said and done, like 5 years from now. He's got that potential. He just needs to kind of find his spot.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a guy that you could potentially, now he's a shorter guy, 6'2", 6'3", right in there. But he's got super long length. So frame wise, he's got a little bit of the ability to add a little bit of weight. I think you could, scheme diversity wise, he can be the 5, but I think you can move him inside and play the 3 as well. Rush from the interior. In fact, I think that's where his home is eventually as an NFL player long term, just because he's just got the length and the strength and the smaller stature to kind of get underneath players leverage wise. So I think he finds success there for sure.
Okay, what's your next pick?
Okay, my next pick is native. No, actually, it's not native. 87. So this is the trade I got from
I have
moving
83.
back off 20. Yeah, off 20 to 23, I picked up Minnesota's third round 87 overall. So
I've got 83 overall. Still, that's the native pick. And I went in a similar direction with you went with Julius Brents a couple picks ago. And I went with Tyreek Stevenson,
nice.
cornerback out of Miami. Bigger guy, good in press coverage, got some, recovery speed. Is patient in press coverage, which will help him as the Seahawks start teaching him the kick step. And I just overall think he's a really good fit to be opposite Tariq Woolen in this defense.
Nice. I had pick 87 and 103 next. Both were traded picks. I came out of the draft with, I'm really happy with these two next picks. Roschon Johnson, the running back out of Texas. I've liked him since the beginning. I thought he was a good fit. He's got low miles on the tires, but he's a perfect physical runner that Seattle needs. We've already got Walker to bounce, kind of a bounce guy, and this is Roschon Johnson. He's not going to be bouncy for you. He's going to be a truck. So he's going to run between the tackles and pick up those short yardage situations. He's not going to have breakaway speed. He's a 4-5 guy, but I think he's a great fit in Seattle's running back room. And at 87, I'm happy for the pick. And then 103, I assume I'm the next pick.
No, actually, I got 94. But
you got going. 94. Oh, go ahead.
94, which is my last non-native pick. So after that, it's just native picks and not even all of them because I traded one away. But at 94, I got Tyler Scott, wide receiver out of Cincinnati. He's a little bit shorter at 5'10", a little bit lighter at about 187 pounds, but great speed, fantastic route tree, very good at getting in and out of his breaks and setting up defenders on there. I think he's a guy that can come in and be everything that the team wanted Dwayne Eskridge to be.
Nice.
So yeah, there's my my receiver finally to come in and help the receiver room.
I went with receiver at 103 as well. I was thrilled that Jonathan Mingo was sitting there from Ole Miss. Is the guy that I've been really looking at as far as if you take a look at Derek Young on the roster currently, he's kind of a Derek Young kind of player. Got a running back body and being able to be a wide receiver. So he's going to be able to schematically do a lot for you. He's a bigger possession style wide receiver. I think he would compete immediately for that number 3 spot. He'll be on the roster, so he's going to get some looks and some touches. 6'2", 220 pounds. Athleticism wise, he's on the upper end there. He ran a 4.46, so he's got plenty of speed. He has a 40-inch vertical and a 10.9 broad, so he shows that agility and athleticism. He's underutilized route tree wise and so forth at Ole Miss, so he's going to have to develop a little bit. That's why he's down in the draft. Production wise as well, under 800 yards receiving, not as many touches as you want. But I like the upside of Jonathan Mingo in this draft. I think he probably ends up going higher than 103. I think teams kind of covet that skill set, even though he's a little underdeveloped. And I could see him going in the 75 range, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's a good pick. I like that pick. So the next pick was 123. And that's a native Seahawk pick. And with this one, I got a player that I know you really like, safety LJ Skinner out of Boise State. Big guy, in the box safety, but has the speed to also help out in the back end. Just a scheme diverse safety that does, free safety and strong safety stuff, but is a big guy. His isn't a small, strong safety the way Jamal Adams is, where you have to worry about him getting beat up a lot. And I just thought overall this was a great addition to that room, and really helped add some needed depth, because I don't trust Adams to stay healthy. And if Adams gets injured, then they don't have any depth after the two starters. So
I agree. He's immediately going to be the most physical safety on Seattle's roster. Julian Love's a physical guy, but he's a smaller, kind of a hybrid role. You've got Diggs on the back end. Ryan Neal was our most physical safety before. He's gone. This guy takes Ryan Neal's spot. Really, he's 6'3", 208. He's kind of a imposing player, a guy that likes to come up and be physical and hit. So you're going to get that tone setter for your defense here, and we need that. We just don't have enough players like that on this roster, so I love that pick.
Who'd you get at 123?
So my 123 went to a pick swap. So as part of my Chicago trade to go to 9, I swapped 123 for 103. So I'd already kind of made that pick, but I was back to my native 151. I also have 152.
Then do both of them, because my next pick is 154.
So got three picks in the 5th round.
Cool.
One is offensive guard, offensive Ryan Haynes from Michigan. He's a guy and a half inches in length, 6'6", 298. So he's a little bit on the lighter side. That's the reason that he's available in this draft. He's kind of a tweener. So they're going to have to work on his functional strength and build some muscle on his frame, get him up into the 310 range, I would imagine, if they see him playing guard. But at that size, he's a very athletic guy. His agility is off the charts. And so he's going to be one of those guys that's going to be able to move around for you in the scheme that Seattle likes to run, with their guards pulling and getting to the second level. And he's kind of in that mold. So it's just a flyer on a guy that maybe has some upside down the road.
I like that pick because I think he can be a backup at 4 positions for you. There's a lot of value in a guy that's that versatile.
And then at 152, linebacker Yasir Abdullah. I became familiar with him from Louisville via Keith. Actually, brought him in on a mock draft.
I love that pick.
A month or so ago. Just super athletic, good upside. A guy that I eventually developed into a starter for you. 6'1", 7. He's got some length, great athleticism. Ran a 4.47 40, Keith, as you know. So a guy that's that's going to be able to drop back into coverage for you, cover some of those quicker tight ends and running backs out of the backfield. A guy that's going to be able to blitz off the edge for you a little bit. Just a scheme diverse guy to add to that linebacker room that they seem to be fairly light on, especially in the middle. And so good pick.
I love that. So then we both have 154. I took a kind of a project super athlete at the tight end spot with Zach Kuntz, the tight end out of Old Dominion.
Love that pick. That's one of my favorite guys in this draft.
Yeah, he's a guy that athletically looks like he could be a dominant player at the next level, but he's coming out of Old Dominion, so you're gonna have to teach him, and develop him. But just a super athlete. He'll be easily the most athletic of the all the tight ends in Seattle's room.
Oh, he looked terrific at the combine.
Yeah, and Seattle's got 3 really good tight ends already, so it's kind of one of those. They don't need that guy, but the guy's got insane talent. So it was worth a pick there, and so
nice. So Keith went with a quarterback in the first round with Anthony Richardson. He's got that position of the future all locked up. For me, I didn't do that. That wasn't my strategy going in. It just wasn't working out for me at the top of the draft. And after that, it kind of gets squirrely anyway. But I went ahead with quarterback Clayton Tune out of Houston at 154. Now, a lot of mock drafts and a lot of big boards have him further down into the close to the 200 range as a player. I don't believe so. I think this is a guy, when you take a look at his physical attributes, the second most athletic quarterback in this draft after Anthony Richardson, ran a 4.6 440 with a 1.55 split, jumps 38 inches on the vertical, 10.2 broad jump. His three cone and shuttle times are really good. So he's got that athletic ability to kind of move around in the pocket, elude pass rushers, and get to his spots. Adequate arm strength. He's not a huge prospect at 6'2 and a half, 220 pounds, but he's league average. And I don't see him, coming out and earning a starting role or possibly even displacing Drew Lock this year. But he would be the third quarterback on the roster. I think he'd be good enough maybe to create that third quarterback on the roster and keep him away from teams on the practice squad. A guy that they could develop. He looks like a career backup at this point, but you never know. I mean, Brock Purdy was an example. This guy also had some good cognitive scoring on the S2 scorecard that's currently in vogue and has come out. I think he was the fourth overall quarterback with cognition as far as being able to make reads and adjustments on the fly very quickly and rapidly. So I think it's just a good system kind of a quarterback, not a guy that's going to create a lot on his own, but a guy that can run your system really well, avoid turnovers, and kind of work in that space. And that's perfect for kind of a backup role.
So he's basically a young Geno Smith.
Yeah. In fact, he comps to Geno Smith.
Yeah. I like that. That's an interesting pick. Not one that I thought of. Looking at quarterbacks down in this range, you usually go with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. My brain likes Jake Haener, although I don't think I've actually got him on one of our mocks at all during this entire draft season. But yeah, interesting there. So my only picks left are 198 and 237. What do you have?
Me too. So
okay.
Go ahead.
So 198, I went with a project, a athletic, undersized edge player coming off the edge in Nick Hampton out of Appalachian State. He's a guy that
very productive guy.
Very productive. It's hard, Appalachian State's not playing against the strongest competition though. And he's undersized. You don't want him on the field against the run a lot, or you're gonna have trouble. But as a situational pass rusher, a guy that can come in third and long, late in games when teams are throwing on every down, that type of thing, and he can be productive for you as a rotational piece. And I thought, we're down just before pick 200 to get a guy that I felt could be productive at the next level. And maybe as, they add some weight onto his frame and bulk him up a little bit with some, a pro weight training program, that they could get him, maybe where he has a bigger role later in his career. But right now, just having another pass rusher that can get to the quarterback would be helpful.
So at 387, I went with Rashawn Johnson, the running back out of Texas, just kind of a bigger back, a guy, a physical style runner. At pick 198, considering our running back room is really pretty light. We currently have Ken Walker Jr. and DJ Dallas on the roster. That's it. We don't have any other prospects, undrafted or not, on this roster currently. I think Seattle could, in fact, come out of this draft with two running backs. They're certainly going to come out of priority free agency with some running backs that are invited to camp. But I went with Israel Abanikanda out of Pittsburgh. I thought he's really got great value at this spot in the draft. This is a spot where I think he's a guy that makes the raw. I really like his upside as a physical guy. He's 5'10", 216, right where they like to have their running backs. He's a guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield, is very adept at that. And so he's going to give you that catching the ball out of the backfield option. I think when you take a look at Dallas is in the last year of his contract. This is kind of a hedge on DJ Dallas on the roster, a guy that can kind of take over as the number 2 guy, possibly number 3 guy on your roster long term. So it's a good value pick for me.
Cool. So we're down at the very end of the draft, pick 237. You already took your second running back. I have yet to take one because I forgot.
Right.
And down in this range, there wasn't many that I liked. But instead, what I did is I went with Northwestern running back Evan Hull. Guy's 240 pounds. He won't make a single person miss.
He's not 240. He's not 240. No.
He's a absolute freight train who runs people over. And he's a fullback more than a running back at the next level. Special teamer and all of that. Bill's going to tell me that he's found it listed at lower. When I looked him up when I was doing this just to make sure I was thinking of the right guy, and I saw 238. So where are you finding? So
because I've got him at 5'10", 209 on NFL.com.
Okay, I had him at 238 on I don't even remember which side I was looking at. But yeah, 238 as a guy that could be a fullback and a just a freight train. And so that's where I was thinking with him. If the resource I was looking at was wrong, which is possible, then I'm like, okay, I can
read you the stuff off NFL now, since I'm here, because I do like this running back. I just think he's more of a receiver out of the backfield thing for them. 4.47 40 5'10" 209, which is right in the range where they like their running backs. He's got some athletic profiles that Seattle likes. It says overview. This is written by Lance Zerlin. Compact, muscular runner with below average explosiveness but decent downhill power. Hull's lack of suddenness and foot quickness is to quickly get in and out of cuts allows defenders to track him down. He needs to play with as much downhill movement as possible, so he will need a quality offensive line in front of him to succeed. Very capable route runner and pass catcher, but needs to improve in pass protection to be considered a third down option. Blah, 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 blah. But anyway, he's the guy that was in the Senior Bowl that led the Senior Bowl in rushing and receiving out of the backfield, I think, during the week. So I like him. Are you sure you weren't thinking about Rodriguez, the guy from Kentucky?
Maybe. Like I said, I looked up. I was like, okay, and I think it was on Draft Network or one of those sites, and that said 238, and I'm like, okay. I was thinking, downhill runner, gonna run people over, not gonna make a single person miss. More of a fullback than a running back,
right.
But
interesting.
Ultimately, guy who's gonna play special teams in that. Now, in the end, that doesn't change. He's still going to be a guy that can play special teams. And if he's going to make the roster, that's what he's going to have to do. So still, it is a running back at the very last pick because reasons.
Because that's how you value them. Yeah. So I went with a guy with a lot of upside. He was sitting there in my mock. I think he's going to end up going a little sooner than that, is defensive tackle Cameron Young out of Mississippi State. I think he was the best player on the board by a mile when I made this selection. 6'3", 304. He's got 34.5-inch arms, so very long interior defender. Good athletic profile. Powerful guy. I think he's going to end up being a nose tackle in the NFL, so he's going to put on a little bit of weight. Still has the athleticism to kind of to develop there, and it's a guy you take a flyer on. The guy develops and works. It's great. Pick 237 overall. So if he doesn't make your roster, not that big of a deal.
Cool. That's your third interior defensive lineman, is not?
Yeah. Well, you take a look at the interior defensive line roster that we currently have, and that's why. It's empty.
I got two on mine, but they were both early in Kalijah and Ade Ade, both in at 37 and 62. So
yeah,
I agree. It's the team's biggest need, and they need to double up. So
the cool thing is, and Seahawks fans should like both these drafts. You went quarterback early, and it didn't impact the rest of your draft as far as getting the kind of guys that you think Seattle needs on the roster. I went quarterback later, and I similarly, wasn't impacted by that, and I still got a developmental quarterback. It's not so urgent now that we've got Geno under contract for 2 or 3 years. Drew Lock's back. There's no urgency there. If quarterback doesn't fall for you in the draft, it's okay. We kind of pass on that. We approach that next year. We trade or whatever happens. We've got some flexibility there. So I like both of our drafts in that you're set now. You got that quarterback of the future. We don't have to address that in the coming years. We develop that. That's cool. You still got your defensive lineman. You've got some other prospects that are really nice. I like my draft because I took a chance on Jalen Carter. If he turns out, hey, the home run, at pick 9 overall in the draft, could potentially be the best player out of this draft. Mozzie Smith. I got my center. You got your center. I got an edge rusher. I got a corner, some running backs, a wide receiver I like. So I'm happy with my draft. The cool thing is I really like both the drafts. And that to me is the best news out of this mock cycle that we just did, because I think no matter what, Seattle's going to end up having a heck of a draft with adding a ton of players. You and I didn't have any crossovers at all, if I remember correctly.
Not in this one.
And so that tells you, and I came out of this with 13 players. I think you had 12. You end up with a ton of prospects that could fit into the system and help this team. And so it's going to be super fun draft.
I ended up with 11, but I have 7 in the top 100.
Nice.
Because of how the trades worked.
Yeah, I ended up with 7 in the top 100, but I also had pick 103. So I ended up with 8 players in the top 103, which, wow.
Yeah. I gave up one of those in order to move up and get Nolan Smith. And honestly, that's worth it.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I like both drafts. I love the fact that you got Jalen Carter, and we're able to get, all sorts of in the trenches help. And that's where this team needs stuff the most. I like the fact that, both of our teams, our drafts were defense heavy, on a team that needs defensive help, like not just up front, but all over. Both got linebacker help. We both got multiple guys on the defensive line. You got a 6'4" corner, and I got a big time 6'3" safety to add to the back end. We both went defensive heavy, and I think you're adding enough young, hungry talent to an already fairly young defense. This is gonna either one of these drafts would set up Seattle's defense to be good this year and great moving forward.
Agreed. Fun show. Fun. All right, let's get out of here. Just for anyone that's still hanging around, listening to the show, Keith and I are going to do a guest appearance on Seahawks Forever podcast with Dan Viennes. Dan started with had the Field Goals podcast. It's the same feed. It's under his own brand now, Seahawks Forever. He's been very successful right out of the gate. So getting to record on Dan's show, longtime friend of our show, and we've guested back and forth for the last 6-7 years, and got his start writing for Keith at 12th Man Rising. And so that'll be a fun reunion show. It's a complete draft preview show. I anticipate that we're going to need food and snacks and a beverage cooler next to us, because that show could run like 2.5-3 hours. So I hope you don't have any plans with your family or whatever. We're recording Monday at 5. I think Keith or Dan normally live streams these things, so look out for the live stream on Seahawks Forever podcast on YouTube or Twitter, and look forward to that for sure.
Cool.
All right, let's get out of here. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is Seahawks Playbook podcast on YouTube. We've got our own channel. Go check that out. Hit the subscribe button. Make sure you share, and we'll see you next time. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NWSeahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.